I'm Jamie Kale Miller of Pandora Astrology here in Berkeley, California.
And I'm Julia Mikas, also Pandora, joining in from New York.
And today we wanted to show you some interesting things that suggest that Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook are going to have a very interesting year. Not necessarily the best kind of interesting, but definitely worth knowing about. So let's begin with Zuckerberg's actual chart. And here it is. And I want to point out a couple of things just about Mark Zuckerberg's temperament to begin with. First of all, he's really young. I don't know if you viewers realize this, but he is only 36 and a half, really young to be running such a massive company. So he doesn't have, the maturity that he might have if he was already deep into midlife. And he is, managing something that's just, massive. It is really sprawling. So he has a lot of my sympathy because, wow, what a thing to have to face, right? And also he has a lot of water in his chart. So look, here's a couple things in Cancer, something in Pisces, and then several planets in Scorpio as well, including the moon. He's actually a deeply sensitive soul and very private, and also a very intuitive person. Couple more things I want to mention. One is that he has the sun in the 9th house with a couple of other things. So the 9th house is really featured in his chart, and this makes him a seeker. He's interested in growing and expanding. And my guess is that he has a sense of ethics and morals. And this year he's probably going to be facing a lot of, antitrust sorts of activities with Facebook, and the idea of Facebook being a monopoly that maybe should be broken up. And I think that he is going to try to wend his way through all of that in a way that squares with his ethics as best as he can possibly manage. The third thing I wanted to mention is that Juno is here in the 10th house. And so he's kind of a matchmaker in his career, which is, kind of perfect for having devised something like Facebook that has just, succeeded in such an enormous way. Okay. So the other really interesting thing is where Zuckerberg is in the human life cycle, the astrological life cycle, which is that he is going into his first Saturn square after his Saturn return. Now, what the heck does that mean? I'm going to circle Saturn here on this chart. And this is something that Julia and I talk about all the time, especially in a kind of reading that we do called Prime of Life, which talks about midlife, because every human being has an experience in midlife, and it's of course unique and different for each person. But this age, 36, 37, is when you cross the threshold into midlife. And it's where life gets really, really complicated for about another 7 years or so until the next Saturn thing. And there are a cluster of transits that happen in there that make midlife so crisisy. Julia, what are your thoughts about this first Saturn square after the Saturn return? What do you usually talk with people about when they come to you and they're experiencing this?
Well, that's a good question. So when Saturn makes hard aspects to itself, it's a time of critical developments in our career where we get really, really tested. And what Saturn's doing is it's trying to make sure that we're on the right track. So if there are things that aren't working out for you around that time, it might be a time to sort of make some pivots and adjustments, maybe cut your losses. Or it can also be a time of manifestation too, where if you've been putting a lot of hard work into your career and you're on the right track, there's usually a lot of productivity and hard work involved, though it can be times of doing well in career at the same time. And Saturn makes a hard aspect to itself about every 7 years. So these are very critical times, especially with our career, which is ruled by Saturn.
Yeah, that is so true. And also sometimes deeper stuff underneath it, such as childhood experiences around authority, father usually in particular, but authority in general. And as we hit these Saturn milestones, which, as you said, happen every 7 years, as Saturn makes an aspect to itself, then all of those themes about authority come up, like, am I the author of my own existence? And what kind of an authority am I? Or what kind of an authority am I becoming? And is it the kind of authority that I want to be? So this is a really big deal. And I like that you mentioned that it can be a sort of a do-over. Like if you feel like you didn't succeed in the way that you wanted to at your Saturn return at 29, then this is a chance to kind of do over.
Yeah, make adjustments.
Yes. Yes, course corrections, like if you got on the wrong path to get on the right path, etc. And it is often a time when, yeah, your work is cut out for you. So that is absolutely going on. And the very best response is to bootstrap yourself, to rise to the occasion, respond with vigor, get in there and do the hard work that is in front of you, because this is not a time to sort of cringe in a corner. It is a time when your response will determine the course of the future. It's a time when if you do take the responsibility that is in front of you, you will materially make things better. So that is going on. But really what makes this so very interesting is that there is another transit going on simultaneously or overlappingly with this, and that is Uranus opposing Saturn in Zuckerberg's chart. So Julia, when you see somebody having a transit of Uranus to Saturn like this, what do you usually make of that? And how do you advise that person?
Ooh, hard aspects from Uranus to Saturn.
Yeah.
Well, we've got two different vibes with both these planets because Saturn is your work. Like you mentioned, it's also authority figures in your life. Saturn is also our security, our sense of stability too. It's that brick wall of reality. While Uranus likes to bring its sudden upsets and disruptions to things. So just speaking from a purely work perspective, this can be a time of running into issues with authority figures. For Mark Zuckerberg, he's the head of his company, so his authority figures could be the US government, senators who are like, oh, Facebook, time to curb you. It can, or in your own life, it could be your direct boss, or if you're still in school, maybe a parent of yours. And it can also be it can be a time where there's a lot of tension because we might get sudden surprises where we think that maybe the structures and the things that keep us stable in life might just kind of get the rug pulled out from under them. So we might look at to where Saturn is in the chart or areas of the chart that it rules to narrow in a little bit more specifically on what that means. But he's going to have to deal with some sudden changes to his work environment and to perhaps the structures and the infrastructure within his company.
Yep. Yeah. That's absolutely what Uranus does when it transits Saturn. Structure being Saturn and Uranus being, sweeping change, especially in terms of, a paradigm shift, taking stuff off of the map that you're used to and looking at it through an entirely new map. So I want to look at the timing of these things. And so here we've got in front of us the timing of the Saturn square, and it begins in April. It finishes in January of 2022. So this is about 9 or 10 months long. That's very normal for a Saturn transit. And during this time, beginning in April, I think Zuckerberg is going to really be feeling the pressure and also the sense of fear that often comes with a Saturn transit to Saturn, a feeling of no exit, of facing, as you said, the brick wall of reality. And these dates that I'm highlighting right now are times when that sensation may be the strongest. The very best response to a Saturn transit like this is to let it mature you, face that reality, and take responsibility for everything that you can. And that is what gives you power with a transit like this. Okay, now I want to also look at the diagram of the Uranus transit because its timing is very similar, but sort of offset by a month or two. So this one, as you can see, begins in May, and then it finishes the following April, actually. So this one is about 10, 11 months long. And that is the shorter of the two lengths that a Uranus transit can be. And this one is probably going to be pretty disruptive. It's not everybody who has the experience that their first quarter Saturn square lines up also with a transit of Uranus to Saturn. This is unusual. This is special just for you, Mr. Zuckerberg. And you're going to have to really be nimble. Now, I want to say one more thing about Uranus transits to Saturn, which is that Uranus brings radical leaps up, down, or sideways. And any of those could be of benefit to everyone in the situation. They could benefit the world, which wants Facebook to break up into smaller pieces or to, in some way, respect monopoly law. They could also be good for Facebook itself, and they could even be good for you, Mr. Zuckerberg. It's a matter of keeping your eyes open for what is the solution that can be good for everybody. And that's taking the high road, right? And so when I say radical leap up, what I mean is that Uranus, when it transits Saturn, can bring a shift to a new stratosphere of success and authority that may actually be uncomfortable to sit in for a while. It may be someplace you didn't expect yourself to be, and which you have to take a little time to adjust. So this transit can require some nimbleness. Now, when I say a radical leap down, that could look like, you know, a massive breakup of Facebook and a sudden like downsizing, right? Or for the everyday person who doesn't run a multinational company, you could be facing, you know, being fired, maybe because you were grumpy on the job and feeling restless anyway. But often I find that a radical leap down is just what a person wants when maybe they want to take a break from what they've been doing, maybe to go start something new, maybe to stay home and raise a family. Who knows? You know, there can be any number of reasons why a radical leap down might be exactly what's wanted, even though it's also uncomfortable. Now, a radical leap sideways can be a shift in so fundamental in the structure of what you're doing that it looks differently, even though, you know, the bottom line is possibly about the same. So any of these are possible with Uranus's transit to Saturn. And I'll bet that you, Mr. Zuckerberg, can figure out ways that it could benefit everybody. Now let's go to the final chart that I have to show today, which is the chart of Facebook's IPO. And I wanted to look at this chart because I wanted to understand whether Facebook itself is having any Uranus and Saturn transits this year. And I was kind of pleased to see that it isn't. Uranus will only be traveling up as far, let me just look at my notes here, 14 degrees of Taurus. It is passing along through the 10th house, which is the career house for Facebook's IPO. And this house also covers things like goals and ambitions for Facebook itself. And you can see that this is a very full house. This company has an identity, and its identity is vested in its own authority, its own companyness, if you will. That's because the sun is here. Also, Ceres is here, and this is a very, very Taurian chart. So I think Facebook has a very big interest. The entity of Facebook itself has a very big interest in making money It wants to make money. Interesting, right? Now, Ceres is at 15 degrees of Taurus, and Uranus will be transiting that next year in 2022. And that might be a time to look for some more volatility around Facebook itself. But I think that this year, 2021, is the time when Zuckerberg is going to be dealing with a lot of stuff that feels more personal to him. And then we're going to see how those changes affect Facebook more in 2022. Another thing I want to say is that Uranus is traveling along through the 10th house in the Facebook chart right now and has been for the last year. It's crossed the midheaven, it's crossed Vesta, and it is going to be moving through the rest of these Taurus planets over about the next 6 or 7 years. And Julia, I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about how that might affect Facebook over this 7-year period? Like, what do you make of Uranus moving through the 10th house of Facebook's IPO chart?
Well, I think that it's basically Facebook's time to revolutionize its career direction. And that once Uranus has finished transiting through the sign of Taurus and through all of Facebook's IPO's chart, then it's going to look like a very different company afterwards. It's going through its own personal revolution.
Yeah, I think that really sums it up. Taurus, we know, is a sign that can be very stable and solid, but also very stubborn and resistant to change. So it's not going to be comfortable for Facebook, but every revolution can be a positive revolution. It's just a matter of figuring out how, because Uranus is not only the revolutionary and not only the planet of tech, which I think makes it really important in this chart, but it is also the planet of humanitarianism. And Facebook's original idea was how to connect people to each other. And so maybe Facebook will figure out a new revolutionary way to do that while still following the laws of the land. So those are our thoughts today about that. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah. Check if you want to see more news videos like this one. Particularly, we made one similar to this about Donald Trump's chart in 2021 because he's going to have some interesting financial stuff going on. You can find that in on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology, in the February 2021 news playlist. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.